In this episode, we've got a lot to cover, everything from shaky couplers to car spots.
I don't have a feed track in this application, but I do have a wash rack.
We end up striking gold, we'll just have to find out, see what it's worth.
The first thing that I do check on a car right away is the coupler type. Now this coupler type I've mentioned in the past, it's Atlas.
We go through the ProtoThrottle, hopefully one last time with a nice upgrade, and wrap up with the test run. We also check out what the Curmudgeon's gripe of the week is this week. Only in this episode of SOO The Milwaukee Road. Uh-oh, this ain't good.
Where'd it go?
Uh-oh, this ain't good.
Where'd it go?
This is a tangent 60-foot bulkhead, and you can see the whole coupler pocket moves up and down. And
That's not ideal.
so we had to take the truck off, we took the coupler pocket off, and then ended up gluing the coupler pocket to the car body. Hopefully that'll hold the coupler up. And while doing so, I reassembled it, but I did reattach the cut lever as well as the little detail piece that was on the underside of the coupler pocket.
Scotty's Model Shop, ProtoThrottle Upgrade.
It was time to upgrade the original knob to a more prototypical EMD style knob simply by purchasing the ProtoThrottle EMD upgrade kit. Now this kit isn't just right out of the bag ready to put onto the throttle. You have to do a little painting and upgrading. And looking at the prototype, I decided I want an actual metal screw. So I ended up going that route by grinding out the 3D printed one and I ended up using a drill bit to help recess it just a little bit more. When it came down to it, I drilled it out to be able to actually have these things be held on with this metal screw. It's turning out all right so far. I do want it to actually hold it onto the throttle because otherwise these things are pressure fit. So I did drill down into the post of the actual ProtoThrottle to be able to then run the screw down, and that's what holds it on. And at this point, we're ready to paint it black, and the black paint that I've chosen to use is a Rust-Oleum epoxy. It's actually refrigerator epoxy, so if you're familiar with the finish on a refrigerator, that's the finish we're going to get here.
Prepping for ops.
I don't think we're going to get past the drama.
All right, now that we've got the audit complete, I end up moving on to cleaning up the railroad. As far as preparation is concerned, get rid of the excess. Anything that's excess on your railroad, just get it out of there to be able to get it cleaned up and not distract your fellow operators.
Like, is that a GP20? Can I use the GP20?
No, we're going to use the engine that's already programmed and set.
This unit wouldn't have ran in the Hiawatha Elevator District necessarily.
Drawbar.
But it is your own railroad and you can do your own thing, yada yada yada.
Is yada yada bad?
Oh, yada yada's good.
But I did label buildings. So this is something that I did to be able to identify what buildings are in what locations. This is important to be able to help operators successfully navigate your railroad without overly complicating or making it too confusing. So I just put a label down here for Atkinson because the building is actually in the foreground. General Mills just has it on its shed, but you get the idea. Label it. I don't have car spots for General Mills, but I do for Atkinson. So Atkinson does have, in this case, it's a feed car. This is for the waste product that goes out. It's going to be an outbound car. And then an inbound, this is going to actually be where the grate track is. This is where a car comes in, drops off its wheat or oats, and then it gets processed. Now, a couple of steps that I am addressing is the use of the wash rack. I'm going to have 2 spots for the wash rack and then the shed. So in a session, this car is going to have been cleaned between sessions. Now it's going to come from this wash rack spot into the shed spot. I temporarily did put up this little structure just so guys knew this is a shed. The shed actually would come all the way out to here in real life. It'd have this little bump out. So this would be 3 shed spots, 1 here, here, and here, and then the wash rack spots. So nonetheless, during operations, this car would go into the building or into the shed, and then cars that are here theoretically are loaded and they're taken out. So it does take 2 sessions to be able to get a car. A new car will come into the wash rack spot, maybe 2 cars will come in, and then they will be spotted into their appropriate shed spots at a later date or at another session. So that's how I'm handling Atkinson, that's how I'm labeling things, and I do that also on the other end. Nokomis is handled the same way. So I do have my wheat unloading. I don't have a feed track in this application, but I do have a wash rack that will hold a couple of cars. And then the shed is right here. So the shed will have a couple spots here. So there are 4 shed spots, one wheat spot, 2 wash rack spots, and that's kind of Nokomis. Cargill itself does have a couple of boxcar. These are doors for boxcar loading, and then specifics to the hoppers that go to the elevator. And the last one I want to cover is elevator T. This one is actually handled in a little different manner in that the garden job will only handle these cars here. So this is considered track 2 as far as the system is concerned. They will pull and set out with this track, and then there is the locomotive that's in the shed, which normally would be the little critter here, this guy here. I have ran with him a little bit, but he's been a little sketchy, so I'm working with just this SW 1500, number 1400, as the switcher in this area. So he's really just going to work the cars that he has and then work this track here. So it is a separate job within JMRI, but the overall operations are concerned. That's why they did it in the prototype. They had a little critter that ended up handling the work, and the actual crew at the garden job didn't handle anything but these cars that they would basically spot for the elevator to work with. So that in a nutshell is the update as far as labels on buildings and getting stuff cleaned up.
It's quiz time!
For some reason, the paint would fade or appear to have burnished by abrasion. This effect was starting to appear in the upper corners of the car, but also notice the weathering allows us to see the outline of the slope sheets inside the car. The shallow angle is necessary to aid in unloading these cars as they are unloaded using air pressure. Do you know what year the Milwaukee Road first purchased the 4180 air slide? Was it A, 1962, B, 1965, C, 1968, or D, 1974? We'll find out later in this episode. Now that the black paint is fully cured on the knobs, it's time to be able to put the little white arrow on there, and I used this Sprint White Racing finish. You can use just about any white, but it's going to fill in this little arrow. This is the same white that I do use on the grab irons of locomotives. It works really well on flexible grab irons because the paint still is kind of flexible. I do use a toothpick as an applicator, really just kind of fill in the recessed arrow. And I come back in here now with some paint thinner, and the paint thinner itself is going to be able to be wiped over the top of the arrow to be able to clean it up and give you a nice crisp look. With the knobs nearing completion, there's one little detail that I did want to address, and it's actually the sheen on the base of the knob. On both knobs here, I ended up masking them off and using a flat camouflage black to be able to achieve this effect. I masked off the top part of the switch, and once you peel that away, you've got a glossy knob, a flat base that matches the plate a little bit better. I ended up doing both the knobs, and in the end, I was quite pleased with the end result. I'm going to take you through the inspection process of a car that goes onto the Hiawatha Elevated District. I don't just throw it on the rails and check it with the coupler height and go, oh, it's good to go. This one's already failed. The first thing that I do check on a car right away is the coupler type. Now this coupler type I've mentioned in the past, it's Atlas.
It's plastic.
It's garbage.
It's trash.
Throw it out.
Replace it.
Yeah, we get it.
So I end up replacing these with KD. That's going to be step one on that car. There are other imposters out there that I've seen do okay, but they're not great. This is an Athearn Genesis car. Again, plastic. I had issues with it just getting with the knucklers stuck open or they get stuck closed. Bottom line, replace it with a KD. I end up moving on to a sleeper in the group.
That's not a sleeper. That's an auto rack.
Well, it is a sleeper in regards to the couplers. So first things first is get it online and check it against the coupler gauge. I can already see it's not passing the coupler height test.
The hose is hitting just on the magnet part there.
The imposter that I'm referring to, or the sleeper in the group, is the comparison between these couplers. Take a look here. Which one is the KD and which one is the Walthers?
If you guessed this is the Walthers and this is the KD, you'd be correct.
I feel like this is an imposter. I've looked at these things in the past. They're a little bit more oversized. They're not exact to what a KD is. They sure look good though. So if this is a KD, I'm wrong, but I've found that in the past that these things have been oversized. We've had issues with them. Switch them over to a KD that you know is tried and true, and we've had good success. The next thing I end up looking at after looking at the coupler type is the coupler height. Is obviously using the coupler height gauge. Taking this Scale Trains car, first things first is bring it onto the tracks, and that thing passes with flying colors. It's set to go. I also then look at the overall coupler swing. How well does this thing recenter itself? Looking at both ends. Very pleased with how well it centers itself. And then I also look at truck movement, making sure that there's nothing that's impeding. These Scale Trains cars have been so nice. I haven't ran into any issues as far as the trucks. I did on the 4180s run into a wobbling issue. The 4180s would wobble like a baby's bassinet.
Rock-a-bye baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will will rock.
Frank, what are you watching?
It's a train video.
But these things here, as far as roll factor, pretty good. I don't have any real qualms about it. If I did, I'd try to find graphite or put something into the journals that would help roll a little bit better. Sometimes that truck swing needs to be tightened or loosened just to eliminate maybe some of that rock factor. But nonetheless, car roll is pretty good. And then the last thing I cover is the weight. I do use a stamps.com. This is a postage scale. I end up being able to set that down. You can reset this or zero it out. So if you want to set, let's say, a piece of track on here, I can set the track, reset it to 0, so now it's zeroed out. Then when I set a car on there, I'm going to get my actual weight of the car and have it just be able to sit on the rails just like that there. So that's the checklist that I go through as far as the inspection list, making sure that cars are ready to roll on the Hiawatha Elevated District.
Everyone's favorite sound, an E-Bell will end up painting the gold button TS21 Gold. It's a Tamiya paint, and it worked out great.
Babies, before we're done here, y'all be wearing gold-plated diapers.
What does that mean?
Never question Bruce Dickinson. Roll it.
That's gold, Jerry. Gold!
Once your gold paint has fully cured, it's time to remove all the screws. That means remove the 4 screws that hold on the backing, as well as the 4 screws that hold on the hardware, and unscrew all the knobs and levers to make sure that you can fully, successfully remove the faceplate. Now it's time to remove the button. I use a little screwdriver to be able to pop this free. And once you've done so, you're going to be ready to put the gold button on after you put the faceplate down. It's key that you put the faceplate down because you can't put this thing on before because you're going to be taking it off. And long story short, put everything back together. Put all the screws where they belong, levers, knobs,
Yada, yada, yada.
Once you've done so, you've got yourself a nice ProtoThrottle that is almost complete.
It's time to answer this week's quiz question.
Do you know what year the Milwaukee Road first purchased the 4180 air slides? Did you guess B, 1965? Their first order totaled 10, while their last order of 4180s was 42 in 1974, many lasting well into the 2000s. The final step is installing the reverser handle. Notice that there's no post to be able to connect this. While I take the old reverser handle and I actually use the Allen wrench, I back out the set screw that's currently sitting inside of it, and I install it into the new reverser handle and get the thing ready for paint. I test fit it to make sure that it's actually sitting the right direction or the way I like it, because I want it squared up on the throttle. So a few trial and error moments here, but in the end I got it where I like it, and it's time for paint. The paint of choice is the same appliance epoxy that we used before, so let's get this thing sprayed up. Once the paint is fully cured, it's time to take out the old reverser, put in the new reverser, and have ourselves a finally completed, upgraded ProtoThrottle. Quite happy with it in the end. Well, since we put all that work into it, we might as well take a look at the ProtoThrottle in action with one of the locomotives on the Hiawatha Elevated District. I do have it set up so the dim to bright to then auxiliary lights.
The auxiliary lights turn on the beacon and ground light.
So if you don't want those on, you just leave it on bright. But we've got the bell ringing, the horn is working, we might as well notch up and roll out. I got a few tweaks yet to do on the audio files, but when it really is all said and done, I do like the prototypical operation, so why not have a prototypical throttle? If you don't have one and you're considering one, it's definitely worth the investment, and yes, it is an investment, but when it is all said and done, it improves the enjoyment of the operations, and
in the end, isn't that what it's all about?
Thanks for watching.
All right, here's a curmudgeon coming at you for the gripe of the week. The gripe of the week this week is about the different couplers you got on all your freight cars. I'm telling you right now, you want to standardize some of that stuff because it's really driving me insane. Oh, you got an Atlas, you got a Bowser, you got an Intermountain, you got all these different things, and you're saying, oh, well, they came with them and I think they look nice. Well, you gotta standardize, my friend. You might think they look nice, but they operate like garbage. Yes, trash! That's right, trash! When it comes down to it, the Curmudgeon doesn't like all that inconsistency, so let's get some consistency. Are you consistent? And that's the Curmudgeon's gripe of the week. Garbage. Yes, trash! That's right, trash!
A big thanks to everybody that watches to the end, that has hit like, hit subscribe, as well as made comments in the past. It's those actions that help share this content, so if you haven't checked out other episodes, feel free to do so. You can also check out the tour of the GN in 1970, as well as the past episodes of the GN in 1970.
70s. Garbage. Yes, trash! That's right, trash!